We're proud to announce CISO Stories, a new podcast series in partnership with Cybersecurity Collaborative and Cyber Reason. CISO Stories features the candid perspectives and experiences of frontline senior security executives and dives deep into timely security topics. CISO Stories is hosted by Todd Fitzgerald, VP of Cybersecurity Strategy at Cybersecurity Collaborative, and Sam Curry, Chief Product and Security Officer at Cyber Reason. Listen weekly as they speak with extraordinary CISOs by visiting securityweekly.com/CSP.
Welcome back to Security and Compliance Weekly. Hey, InfoSec World 2021 is proud to announce its keynote lineup for this year's in-person event. Hear from, I looked up this name pronunciation earlier and I forgot it already, Robert Herjavec, plus heads of Herjavec, whoever he is.
Shark Tank guy, yeah.
Yeah, I don't watch Shark Tank. I don't know who it is. Also, heads of security at the NFL, heard of it. TikTok, heard of it. U.S. Department of Homeland Security, heard of it. Stanford University, heard of it, and more. Plus, Security Weekly listeners save 20% on World Pass and main conference registration. How do you take advantage of that discount? Visit securityweekly.com/ISW 2021 and register now. Also, in case you haven't heard, Security Weekly Unlocked will be held in person this December 5th through 7th at the Hilton Lake Buena Vista. That's in Florida, by the way. Bring your masks and bring your vaccination cards, even though nobody will ask you for them. We're excited to announce our first round of speakers, who will include Leslie Carhart, David Kennedy, Alyssa Miller, O'Shea Bowens, Marina Chiavata, did I say that right? Patrick Coble, Chris Eng, Eric Escobar, Nick Leghorn, Michael Schlatt, Kevin Johnson, and, can you believe it, Justin Kohler. Want to be part of the action? Go to securityweekly.com/unlocked to register and check out more about our lineup of speakers. All right. I want to jump back into the discussion. Fascinating picture that you've been painting so far, Naomi, and I wanted to share very briefly something that I've been thinking about. I'm giving a talk in a month at a conference in person live. So exciting. It's been so long. But my topic is sort of on the topic of, how do you become a professional, but more finely tuned towards I think what Scott alluded to earlier is, security. You mean you're a pen tester, hackers, all that kind of thing. I am often asked, how did I get my start in this profession? And I got my start working at NSA, the National Security Agencies. So the question really is, how did I get a job at NSA? And what I've been thinking about lately, and hopefully this will help spark the discussion for this segment, is I was hired at NSA back in it'll be 35, I'm sorry, it was 35 years ago, in a month, in a time when NSA was hiring computer scientists, mathematicians, and engineers. That's all they wanted to hire. If you had those degrees, they recruited all the major colleges and universities throughout the country. Graduate with that degree, boom, you had a job, higher paying pay scale than the regular rank and file. I actually went through a different route. I heard that they were hiring, filled out an application, was invited to Fort Meade to take a couple days worth of aptitude tests, a battery of kind of skills tests, and based on my scores, they hired me. So I was none of those mid-level, if we can extend the analogy, mid-level experience. I didn't have a CISSP. I didn't have this degree, that certification, that training, all that. I simply scored well on a test. And what I've been trying to do a little bit of research on or think about, and I think this is, I hope this is what you're getting at with your foundation, is how do you recognize the potential, the aptitude, the talent in people without them having necessarily a degree or a training or a cert, but just the raw potential. I'm trying to figure that out because NSA clearly had it figured out. It's why they hired me. I went on and had a somewhat successful career, did some things, yada, yada. It's not about me. But what I'm trying to figure out is, how did NSA do it? How did they know to what skills tests to give, what things that they see? What I do know anecdotally is NSA always liked to hire people with liberal arts degrees. They liked to hire, and I think this is more from a national security perspective, they like to hire people from Utah of a particular religion, because they were good and wholesome and less likely to do the bad things that they could be compromised over. But that's not really relevant to the conversation. But what are, to kick off the discussion for this segment, what are some of the things that we need to look for, or you're trying to train the trainers, the ones that are trying to hire people? What are the things we need to be looking out for to recognize people as having the aptitude or the potential for succeeding in careers, whether they're technical or non-technical, or if there is such a thing, so on and so forth? Go.
Yeah, I love this question. I'll turn it right back around to you, Jeff, because the NSA certainly didn't knock on your door in the middle of the night asking you to apply to this thing. You self-selected yourself, did you not? Did you not go up and say, hey, I'd like to join? So at some point you had an interest, right? Or literally, nice. Did they find you fishing or whatever you were doing, like just chilling out on a Saturday, right? Did you self-select or...
That's an interesting question. I grew up in Maryland. NSA's in Maryland. I never heard of it. Back in the day, it was a very clandestine, low-profile organization. So frankly, when I applied to it, I really didn't know what they did. I did know that they had something to do with code breaking, and if it was self-selecting, and I've only figured this out in the last couple of years as I try to answer this question, how did you end up there? I grew up in a family that liked to do puzzles, and crossword puzzles, crypto quizzes, everything that used to be in the Dell Crossword Puzzle magazine, if anybody's ever heard of that. And in particular, those books had logic problems. And in a cosmic karmic event, my first job at NSA was in a cryptologic shop on the InfoSec side. So we were creating crypto systems rather than breaking them. And my mentor was a very well-established, brilliant man to this day, probably still the smartest person I've ever met, cryptologist. He was a cryptographer. He did the code-breaking stuff, but he moonlighted on the InfoSec side of the house. And this is the karmic event, he, as a side job, used to write the logic problems for Dell Crossword Puzzle magazine. So it was full circle for me right from the very beginning.
Maybe
so
they were tracking you this entire time.
Well, perhaps.
It was a leading question because, honestly, Jeff, I like you as a human. I think you're extremely amazing. But are you that unique? Are you the only person within your Maryland suburb or wherever you grew up doing those crossword puzzles and logic puzzles? Are you unique where somebody just like you down the street could not have also done the same job as you? Like, you were given a mentor, you're given training, you're working alongside amazing people. Could somebody else just like you with your background experiences and your life do the same thing? Question. Yes or no?
No, I am that unique, but I'm the exception to the rule.
So if you are that unique, I would say in cybersecurity, I don't think it can't do the same thing where you can take somebody like me, just whatever background you want to give me, suburb, fairly intelligent. I wouldn't say I'm like massively genius or anything like that, but I do puzzles as well. I went to college before and I graduated high school. It's like those kinds of things where other people do the same thing. I'm not that special. And so I will say, if you take the people who've self-selected, who are already interested in cybersecurity, you give them training and mentoring, they're already going to be good enough. What you're kind of assuming by like, how do we find the right people? You're assuming that people can't be found or the people don't have the potential already. Your question, I think, is a false assumption of saying, how do we find the people with the right potential? I think everyone has potential. I think everyone is able to grow. They are not fixed in their intelligence. They're not fixed in their emotional intelligence. They can grow and improve. You just need the right environment, the right teacher, and you want to find somebody with that right level of passion and the right ability to think critically and those soft skills that are harder to teach. So I will challenge you, Jeff.
I am open to that thought, but I don't agree with it simply for the notion, and It doesn't have to be this field, but any career field that requires specialization, let's say. Does everybody have at one level, I agree with you. Everybody has the potential to be anything. But I think there's also the idea of some people are better at some things than others, or some people are driven or steered or motivated or attracted to things more than others. It doesn't necessarily have to be a skill or a talent. Maybe it's just an interest. But I know people that are brilliant at accounting and finance, not me. I'm not a brain surgeon. Maybe I could have been one. Maybe I could have been an excellent one, but it wasn't me. So I think there's room for, and I would categorize it as people finding what they like to do, what they enjoy doing, things that excite them and hold their interest. As a layer on top of, yes, everybody has the potential to be anything. I mean, I could have grown up and been president. We all have that possibility as American citizens. And yet very few of us are stupid enough to go that route. There, I see.
Yeah. No, I hear you, Jeff, and I partially agree with you, but then I think you're also wrong. But I do hear your argument, which is like, everybody has potential, and but there are some people who are going to have natural talent and natural aptitude. That influences your velocity of gaining skills, right? Like, how quickly are you going to gain these new skills? Going back to kind of like Naomi's question and her point, though, when I think about this problem, I think about it more of a hiring manager problem of where and it sounds like the NSA actually did their homework. They actually spent some time in this. And it sounds like when they reached out to you, Jeff, they were looking and really understood the problem they were trying to solve. And so they knew the right criteria to actually select for. Inside of InfoSec now, especially as this, corporate entity and people can make money at, oftentimes we're just being lazy, for lack of a better word. So we're saying like, oh, well, hey, somebody has to have this certification, as opposed to really understanding from a first principle standpoint, what does that certification mean? Like, what is it you actually need somebody to do on a day-to-day basis? Do you need somebody to understand anomalies inside of a data set? Well, it turns out actually understanding anomalies inside of a data set isn't something that's specific to an InfoSec person. That's actually something you can actually find people doing in a lot of other areas inside of a company. So you could be a business intelligence analyst, and part of your job is understanding anomalies inside of data. Well, wow, holy shit, you could actually be a SOC analyst. You could actually be somewhere else in the security spectrum. When it comes to things like, hey, understanding how humans interact with systems, that's like a classic problem you actually find with somebody operating an IT help desk, understanding that connection between technology and humans. Holy shit, you can be a security person. But I don't think a lot of hiring managers are doing the necessary work, because we as an industry, one, we have this massive ego problem. We want everybody to think what we do is magic and secret, and it takes all these years. Like the stuff that I learned as a kid, that was actually it was super simple. I mean, obviously I know now, exploits, et cetera, are much more complex because systems become more complex. But a lot of those things aren't unreasonable or unapproachable for anybody to actually get into and learn from. And we see this all the time, especially, you follow like some of the other communities. When you actually go to some place like DEF CON, you see people from all kinds of backgrounds. They have an interest in security, they had some aptitude, et cetera, but they didn't necessarily need to be a math graduate. They didn't have to, be a CS grad or anything like that. It literally is people from all walks of life. But the hiring challenge there is making hiring managers less shitty and less lazy. And for us as hiring managers to actually do a better job of making sure that we're looking for the actual capabilities that are necessary to be successful in security, as opposed to certifications or pedigrees that are necessary to be successful in security.
So let's make the hiring managers less shitty and less. That's
my new tagline. Yeah, right? I got it.
Make the hiring managers less shitty. That's awesome tagline. Yes.
Well done, I want to throw that back at you, Feline, and say, is it that we're making hiring managers less shitty, or is we as tech people are actually communicating our needs?
Ooh, maybe it's a little bit of both, but I don't think that burden should be placed on the people applying for these jobs or ICs, et cetera. Ultimately, right, a hiring manager's job is to build a good team.
It's all like spun, mutilated, spindled, I don't care how you do it, into these esoteric, arcane requirements that we have candidates trying to fill.
I know.
It's not just can't talk to the
business. It's not just this industry. Here's the point. It's not just this industry. You got to understand, and I plead the fifth. Brought it up. I was about to do it in law, but in this is in Discord, by the way. If you're not in the Discord, please join the Discord. We have great discussions in there all through the show. But here's my point that I have knowledge of is that in law, in the legal profession, it used to be that lawyers get out of law school not knowing how to be a lawyer. They understand the law, but they don't know how to be a lawyer. It's two different things. And so they go through their first year or two of being with a firm, and everybody knew this. You were billed to clients while you were being taught how to be a lawyer. Okay, so you were helpful, you were useful, but you were about as useful as a paralegal who comes in at a much lower billing level, let's be clear. And then after a year or two, you become useful as a lawyer. So that was sort of the apprenticeship years, if you know what I'm saying. And it's not a formal or official, but we'll call it that for ease of use. And then the client started going, wait, why am I paying for these first year lawyers? They're not doing anything for me. And so law firms stopped doing it. And so lawyers stopped getting hired right out of law school. It was, you want to come work for us? Show us your years at law firms. They're like, well, I'm just out of law school. What do I do? And it's the same kind of quandary. And then you've got military people come out, and this is what I plead the fifth said. Great point, I plead. People come out of military, and they may be fantastic, and they may suck. You know, there's people in the military that are like, hey, you know, you can train me, but I'm going to have the contractor do the work. Somebody else, I think Dimitri said that. But I mean, it's a tough thing when you're not allowed to charge for the entry level people to learn as well as do the work that they can do. Okay, you trained Naomi. You trained your opera singer Jessica, I think her name was. Forgive me if I mangled that. As an intern, and once you trained her as an intern, which presumably she was, no offense, fairly cheap as an intern, you hired her. So, but what we need to do is have a way for people to get that experience so they can be hired, or just change the culture so they can be hired directly out of school. And I'm trying to come back to you. Forgive me. Go ahead.
You're exactly right. I mean, like, now that we know what the problem is and it's pervasive throughout different industries, like you're saying, well, like, let's do something about it. And this is what my chance is. Like, I think my whole story, my entire life was supposed to be in the FBI. Like, my entire life was built around being in the FBI. And the reason why I wanted to be in the FBI was to fight cyber criminals, and specifically get people, cyber child porn and stuff, like, capturing those guys. Like, I wanted to be a good guy fighting a bad guy. And now I realize I think my purpose in life is to still fight against cybercrime. Even though I might not be in the FBI, I could still fight against cybercrime. And I think that's what my mission on earth is to do. And I'm totally grateful for the opportunity. Is it super scary? And am I putting myself out there? Yes. But I think it's worth the risk. I think if we're going to have a future that has negligible impact of cybercrime, I think it's worth the effort that we're putting in. And, tell that to the 800 volunteers that have signed up to help me with this cause. I think a lot of us have the same vision. We not only do we want jobs, yes, that's great, but we want to see a future that's free of cybercrime.
Naomi, you have convinced me. I need to be member 801 of this organization. So I'm so here for what you're trying to do at Cyberbreakers. And yep. Totally hear you, Josh. And my perspective is that we need to change the culture. We have a shitty culture in security, and this whole gatekeeping thing is just bullshit. Everybody in security was a noob at one point. And also, I do understand your point with regards to, like, hey, it takes time for actually to up-level and train, et cetera. But the reality is, especially within our industry of security, you have to do that anyway. Right. There wasn't Kubernetes, 12 years ago, but now you actually learn it. And the idea is, like, if you're in this industry, you are constantly learning. And I think it's unfair and just literally just unjustified to penalize people earlier in their career for knowledge that they don't have, because we're all in that same position today.
Yep. I'm definitely
20 years ago, there wasn't AWS. Yeah. And I still got jobs as a security practitioner.
My favorite joke about this, and it's not a joke, this is a true story, is I forget the specific technology, but a guy put it on Twitter. He goes, I applied for a job and I didn't get it because I didn't have 4 years experience with this certain technology. He goes, but I only created it 2 years ago. Yeah. So I mean, we have a bad culture, both in HR and hiring managers and hiring requisitions. How many of us talk about the HR filter? You got to get past the HR filter to get to the people that can understand you and talk to you in the language that you understand, and can actually decide whether you're going to fit their team, their technology, their needs.
I totally would go against that and say, we don't have a bad culture at all. What we have is a culture that's grown with the needs that businesses have told them. So if we're telling these people the wrong thing, aren't we like perpetrating or perpetuating? Sorry, not perpetrating, perpetuating that culture?
Could be both.
I believe so, and I think we're both perpetuating and perpetrating. I love that. There's a lot of perpetrators in security, man. Don't get me started on that. There's a lot of perps out here in security.
So how do you feel about perpetrators in security, Flea? I just, I figure we got some time. No, never mind.
Yeah. No, but like I think the whole HR filter is a cop-out. And the reason why I say that is, at least for anybody else that's like a security leader, like Naomi, et cetera, if you're a CISO, it's your job. Like you knock those things out of the way. You don't have to sit there and just say like, oh, well, the HR person says that if I hire security folks, I have to have a CISSP. No, you're the CISO. You get to determine what roles should be there, what those job recs should look like, what are the actual requirements you're looking for. And it's upon us as people who at least claim to know how to do risk management to actually make good risk calculations and place good bets on people. And if you really are somebody who's supposed to be a risk expert, you should be able to actually recognize that talent and understand what is going to be suitable in these roles for actually people to be successful at your company, not your HR department. If you're putting this on your HR department, you fall into that category of shitty managers that we want to get rid of.
Flea, we as security people often joke about the different C-level roles. And in fact, one of the prevailing jokes that keeps going around is that the CISO is the chief scapegoat officer, right? Everything rolls into the CISO. So could the first thing that you do as a CISO when you step into a new organization is sit down with HR and say, okay, what are your hiring requirements? How can I help you to help me be more effective? I mean, there's a lot going on when you step in, but you're right that it does fall on the CISO's shoulders. However, where does that fall? Like, where in the chain?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, the CISO owns all of it. And that's full stop, because you own the outcome of your organization. So you have to own what that hiring looks like. And I love that question just because there are so many people in HR or recruiting or however you actually want to phrase it who would love for CISOs to actually work with them better, to actually give more specific guidance, give more details.
If only we had a CISO on the show that could weigh in on this.
Yeah. Too bad you're not letting me talk.
Sorry.
Sorry for all the mansplaining.
I do have to leave in a few seconds here, but I'll just say, like, I agree with Flea here. Like, it is on the CISO to make the change, but I also want to challenge the people who are not CISOs. You have a voice here. Your CISO is going to listen to you. If they're a security leader at all, if they're a leader at all, they will be listening to their direct reports. So I constantly try to get feedback from my direct reports. Hey, is this a kind of a role that we need, or can we talk about this person? What do you think of this person? Right. And so I listen to my people. I use them as input into my decision, and you have a voice. As an individual contributor, you can say, can we get some shadows on our team? Can we build a security champions program? Can we get some interns? You, individual contributor who does not have any managerial responsibilities, you can actually do something about this job gap, this whole gap thing. Like, you have a responsibility. We all do. And so I challenge you to really focus on what you can do as a person, and not just put blame on HR or put blame on your CISO who's not doing anything, or put blame on your C-suite for not giving you headcount. You can do something. You can mentor somebody. You can pay for someone's security certifications. You can do something to help win this war.
Right, but if the CISO ultimately owns it, wouldn't that be seen as passing the buck?
Yeah, no. You can do something. You can do something yourself. It doesn't have to be within your organization, but you can still mentor somebody. You can still help somebody out with a conversation. You can still talk to somebody, talk to a school, right? There's like little things that you can do. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm going to talk to the board today to get budget for my people. Like, that's right, but not everybody.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, as the CISO, doesn't that fall on your shoulders?
Oh yeah. That's what I was saying. Yes.
Listen, if you choose to delegate, that's fine. But wouldn't that be seen as a passing of the buck? Like, I'm too busy as a CISO. Don't bother me with these things, because
it depends on whether it works out or not.
A lot of times it is. A lot of times it is.
Yeah, for the bigger, I can see that. Yeah,
we sit back as tech people and we say, well, we don't understand business decisions. We don't understand why our budget's being pulled, or why we can't bring people in, or why we can't have the tools that we need to do our job, or if we had this one thing, it would make our life so much easier, let alone being able to go out and talk with HR and have these discussions about risk, when ultimately that falls directly on the CISO's shoulders. So wouldn't that be seen as either a denial of risk, it's not just a river, or as a transfer of mitigation? Like, walk us through that process.
Well, and I
have 10 more seconds and then I have to run.
Make this the last word. Please.
Okay, I don't condone passing the buck. Now, I will say again, it is the CISO's responsibility to hire and train the next generation, but I also believe the individual contributors have a role to play in this also. So everyone has a responsibility. Stop blaming everyone else. Again, you are the common denominator to all of your problems, including your work problems. So take responsibility, take accountability, do some self-reflection, and see what you can do to improve what we're doing here. Thanks, everyone. Thanks. I got to run.
Thanks, Naomi. I appreciate you joining us today. If you guys want to follow Naomi, she's you can find her on LinkedIn, Naomi Buckwalter. She's also on Twitter, ampersand, or @ for you millennials, I need more cyber. Sorry, I come from the days of typewriters.
Did we just get typewriter explained?
We did every time I open my mouth, I'm mansplaining. Think about it. Naomi had to go because she's a virtual CISO and she had work to do. But really appreciated the conversation today, in spite of the fact that I think we talked over top of her and she was very polite to let us ramble. Our bad. Tune in next week. We will be back. We will be talking to Tim Callahan. He's one of the speakers at InfoSec World, and I suspect we'll be talking about his topic. But anything goes.
Do we want to start teasing about what we're working on in the background? Something dealing with like Priya's area. Do we want to start teasing that?
Not yet.
Okay.
Well, that I think that effectively was a tease, but we've got a lot of fun episodes coming up in the next couple months that we're working on. We're trying to change things up a little bit and not change our format, but just do some fun, exciting, different things. So that's enough of a tease for now, gentlemen. Always good to talk to you, Josh. Get back to your kid and your vacation, Scott. I'll see you in 2 weeks after you're quarantined for a while.
Yep.
And we need to catch up with the cigar and Flea.
Sure.
I don't know when we're going to see each other, but I hope to see you sometime.
Yeah. What this whole COVID thing has done, I will, escape the bunker and actually see humans in person again. So.
Well, worst comes to worst, I'm sure I'll be out. Well, assuming. Worst comes to worst, we'll be all in lockdown again. But assuming that there's a live RSA event next February, hopefully we'll all hang out then. I will give one teaser for you, Scott. We're thinking about somewhere around episode 100, if we can pull it off, trying to get all of our co-hosts together in person, in studio. Some of us have never met in person, but we would love to just get together and celebrate 100 episodes, which, coincidentally is somewhere probably in January, which is a horrible time to go to Rhode Island based on the 500th Paul Security Weekly episode. But
oh man, that episode was epic. We literally walked in, it was clear, nothing was going on. We walk out of the studio and there's like 1.5 to 2 feet of snow on the ground. It's
it was like 2 feet of snow.
It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
Well, that's it. We should let everybody get back to their lives.
Thank you much.
I've got day job. We've all got day jobs to get back to, but we'll sign off for now. Stay safe, stay secure. Let's keep building bridges, tearing down silos, and breaking gates on Security and Compliance Weekly.